All right, the March 26, 2019 meeting of the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission is called to order. The President's quorum. We got Commissioners Brown, Clifford, Hicks, Kimmery, and we are missing the non-voting Dick Friege today, but that's okay. So first on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our March 4th meeting. I am assuming all the commissioners have had a chance to review. Are there any questions, any discussion? All right. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second.
Second. Those in favor?
All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Next on the agenda is the approval of claims and purchase orders for payment. Today we got one claim for $5,453.20. Mr. Starnes, please comment on these transactions and resulting in the vouchers.
Yes, this is one item through BCA, the environmental consultant. This is related to work that was performed on the Meyer Plastics site right before construction began to actually vacate and close some of the monitoring wells that were under what is now the footprint of the Meyer Plastics building. So related to the city's work in support of that project. Any questions about that? Yes, Bruce.
Not about that specifically, but
Okay.
refresh my memory. Have we about consumed all of that EPA grant?
We have, and we've closed it out. Yeah. That grant was spent down and closed really last fall in accordance with the cooperative agreement there. So any future expenditures for environmental work on the site necessary to get closure will come out of the sale proceeds that were remitted to the city, to the Redevelopment Commission from the purchase by Meyer Plastics and held by us for that purpose. And I believe this amount is paid out of those funds in conjunction with the controller. When that invoice came in, I made sure they were aware, and they've parked those in a city account to be used for this purpose.
Did we apply for another Brownsfield grant?
Yes, we did. Yes. That application was submitted at the end of January, and so we're kind of in a waiting period. We should hear, let's see, I think we should hear back as to whether or not we're selected in June or July timeframe. And after that point, there's a period where we work on getting a new cooperative agreement between the RDC and the EPA, and we would have funds available generally by October of 19 if we were to be selected for an additional grant. So the application came together very well. We were able to demonstrate that we've really leveraged those grant funds well. The $400,000 grant, of course, went to help Meyer. It also went to help Mission Mechanical and do some important work there that led to private investment on the other side. So it came together as a good application, and it should be competitive, but we'll see. We did apply, yes.
I have a quick question about the accounts payable, the voucher. I just want to make sure, since we have a minute. So Jason Fenwick, our controller, looks at these invoices, and somebody's checking the professional services agreement that we have with BCA to make sure that this invoice is consistent with our professional services agreement with them.
Yes.
And
I do that part.
you do that part. And then Jason approves the invoice to make sure that.
And make sure it's paid out of the right account, Jason and his staff, yes.
I just want to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Yep.
And since you brought that up,
Yes, Jerry.
we'll still, that the monies that are being held
Yeah.
in escrow, we're still expecting this to work out, if you will, in our favor.
Yes.
Because, yeah, and so we'll see a reimbursement that won't be held for other purposes. It'll just be an reimbursement back to our, if you will, general fund. Correct. Yeah.
Should, yes. And I did, while on the topic, I think I was going to tack this on to staff report, but while we're on the topic of finances and claims and approvals, I did tell the controller after our last meeting that I'd like to, do a new budget for 2019 and illustrate that. So he and I will work on that and present it at the next month's meeting. And
At the end of?
at the next month's meeting, yeah. So that'll be in process. And I think there's also a request for interest that is being gained on the current accounts. And so if that may be in the, I don't recall if there's an interest item on the financial update, but we'll make sure that that's part of the overall budget presentation, as well as that escrowed, or the money that was remitted to the RDC from the Meyer sale, where that is and what it'll be used for, and we'll just make sure that's part of the budget.
Cool.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? All right, if there are no further questions, can I have a motion for approval?
So moved. Second?
Second.
Who moved?
I move.
He moved.
Okay,
I
thank you.
seconded.
Thank you.
All those in favor by show of hands? Unanimous. All right, next we will move to our staff report. Mr. Starnes, can you walk us through this?
Certainly, thank you. I did circulate, I think you've all seen now, a set of plans, drawings related to this first topic here, which is a kind of a wayfinding placemaking project at the intersection of 465 and 56th Street. That's the only set I have, but I wanted you to be able to see, just for context, what I'm talking about. The city has actually been approached by Millersville at Fall Creek, which is a community organization. Their boundaries are almost as irregular as ours, but they essentially span kind of 56th Street, Fall Creek, mostly on the Lawrence Township side, kind of jutting over toward Lawrence to Shadeland and up, and they touch, I think, primarily Lawrence Township, touch the city a little bit, some in Washington Township. I mean, I think they have 4 council districts within Millersville geographic area. But this is an organization that was put together some time ago to handle community development and beautification efforts, and they've done some great things along Fall Creek with KIB. They were instrumental in actually extending the Fall Creek Trail up to the Fort Bend State Park. So it's an organization that's, I think had some good impact on the area, and they happen to have a landscape architect on their board who has been really kind of clamoring for some placemaking, wayfinding at 465 and 56th Street for some time. I met with them probably a year ago or more initially when they were sketching out what that could look like. Of course, I tend to think that that's needed as well. I certainly agreed. They more recently met with Mayor Collier about support for kind of the initial plan that they've, at least preliminarily, have put together. That is what was illustrated on what was circulated amongst you all. And the mayor, separately from the Redevelopment Commission, has committed to assist them and match whatever they're able to raise to get this type of thing constructed right there for again, kind of a placemaking, beautification, wayfinding effort. So I met actually just immediately prior to this meeting with a couple of the board members for the Millersville at Fall Creek organization. I'll be assisting them as they approach various potential partners for funding that will likely include the school foundation, cathedral. They've got, it's designed to kind of point both directions. We'll be talking to the Lawrence Chamber about potential inroads to corporate partners, here and in Lawrence Township, both. And we'll see where we get, but the idea is very much that we'd like to see that in what is currently just dead right-of-way space, kind of in the bowl of 465 and 56th Street, just to help orient people and also kind of beautify the area. That actually, there's it was not included in the package of copies they gave me today, but that is designed to be lighted through a solar lighting system, so even at night, and built kind of up on the hill where it'd be visible from 465 and give a good kind of front door gateway kind of effect. Even at night, it looks, thank you. Thanks, MJ. The rendering of it at night with the lighting was especially, I wish I had a copy because it's especially striking. It'd be really nice. So hopefully we can make that come to fruition. If any of you have suggestions as to potential avenues for fundraising, we'd like this to be a good community effort. We'd like to see some good diversity of funding while also avoiding putting everybody and their brother on the sign. So that'll be the trick, I think. Like it can't be 40 feet tall and just point to everybody, you know? So while keeping it limited to things like Fort Bend and the state park and the coming library branch and, you know, government offices and school offices and things like that that are important. Still, you know, very much like to see it just from an overall gateway standpoint. So wanted to just update you that is something the mayor's asked me to work on and help with the group raise other money for. And if you have suggestions, let me know.
How much money needs to be raised, Ken?
Well, we're working with a sign company on the estimate. The first iteration based on that design came back at around, I think the total was around $170,000, but that included a couple of elements that would likely come off. I think they thought about doing another Lawrence piece up closer to the intersection that's probably not needed and would rather have it kind of out in the middle. So, and some other contingency that we want to dig into and make sure that we have a firm estimate. But I think we're kind of treating $150,000 as the target right now, just to see what we can raise and go from there.
Two
Yes.
follow-ons.
Yeah.
Are the schools involved with this?
Not yet.
Okay.
They're definitely on the list to approach.
Yeah.
And I tend to think they'd be excited.
What role do you see the chamber playing in this?
Really a conduit role. Just if there are members that they think might be excited to see this happen at 465 and 56th Street, it might be a good introduction to go to talk to them about what the project is and whether they might support it financially.
I think I have two questions as well. Well, do we have to get a billboard permit from the city of Indianapolis?
You know, I don't think so, but I'm not entirely certain.
And then could we possibly do advertising, raise the money to allow some Lawrence business or two or three to pay advertising dollars to help fund it?
It's certainly an option. I think we're right now in the window of, do we get to that as a needed way to fund it? And I think some more local loose ends to follow up on. The group, the Millersville at Fall Creek group, has already made good contacts with NDOT. It's their right of way, so we'd also need rights of access or an easement or something to be able to do it, and they've been very supportive. I think it's something they have been trying to see happen, and some of their, while they don't tend to want to fund these kinds of things, are usually willing to let them happen. And there would be landscaping elements to this too, plantings and things that would be complementary. But so NDOT seems to be on board with letting it happen. We'll also need to look at what permits are needed from a City of Indianapolis, Marion County, City of Lawrence standpoint, and what people want. I think part of the trick in the fundraising is what are we offering? Because again, we can't put everybody on the sign. So is there a way to give recognition where it is due without an arrow and an inclusion on the big sign, whether that's some manner of advertising, some other smaller type of recognition, just so people know who the partners are. So we'll see. It's early, very early stages. I think, again, this group met with Mayor Collar, who was supportive of the concept and the idea, and has really just said, let's see where this goes and see who gets on board. Schools and chamber and others are our first stops, just to see who's out there that might be interested.
Will it be on both ramps onto 56 or just going north or?
So I think this is the conceptual illustration is just for going north.
Yeah.
South is, I think, a little more complicated because there's a lot less land to work with. So it'd be great to have something there too, but I think the focus initially has been on the north and the east side. You have tons of area that's just kind of blank, and for better or for worse, I think there's some electrical infrastructure or something kind of in the right of way on the southbound lanes, and not a lot of space there. But yeah,
Is this something that if we are successful in fundraising and we can continue to fundraise, that we can do at both 465 and 56, then 465 and Pendleton Pike on those ramps? Because we're going to be having Trades District in, and we're going to get a lot more.
yeah. I like the idea. I think it would be less. We'd have to probably look for a different partner. And again, this really came to us from Millersville. They're interested in 56th Street. We might be interested in Pendleton Pike. And there is the City of Lawrence sign that's there, the landscaping that goes back years. I'm not sure when that was installed, but looking for some other kind of partner down there that might be interested or funding it. I mean, that's an option. This 465 and 56th Street would not be in the Pendleton Pike TIF. Like, it would be difficult for the RDC to authorize it. I don't know that we'd be able to meet the test to be able to use Pendleton Pike TIF funds up there. We certainly could down there. And if that's something that the commission wanted to see happen from a placemaking standpoint, especially as we get a project there, it's certainly something we can consider as an investment by the commission. And from there, maybe look for other groups that might want to invest.
Would we own the design work so that way we would be able to do it in the future to keep branding the same and stuff, or is it owned by the commission or the redevelopment group?
So they have used the city's logo,
Okay.
which I think we tended to like because it was good and visible and impactful. And I think the rest of it is not really proprietary.
Okay.
It was just kind of here's an idea. It's Core 10 steel panels that are water jet cut with like a leaf pattern, which was a good tie to the park and foliage in the Fall Creek Valley. That's lent itself to the city of Lawrence and Millersville. Of course, Fall Creek goes that way too. Lots of trees and mature flora, et cetera. So I don't know that it was really proprietary that they would.
Just want to make sure if we want to continue to brand, we're able to keep that consistency.
Yeah, good point. And I would say that the Trades District Plan does speak to some placemaking elements that might come into play, especially right there, neither in a section that would be specific to the Trades District that may be RDC investments in the future, whether they match this one or have their own flavor related to the Trades District. Yeah, we'll as a decision, I think we could talk about in the future. So just to update you that I'll be working on with this group on seeing if we can make this possible. And if you have thoughts about who might be interested in contributing, let me know. Because that'll be the work of it. Really is.
My only question would be, as 56th Street continues to morph and grow, are we going to be able to edit these signs without crazy costs incurred?
I think.
Or would you add another one, or how would it?
Good question, and I don't know. Honestly, I think that would be part of the impetus behind not wanting to put everybody on the sign.
Yeah.
Like things that aren't going to really move probably make the most sense. Like the state park or the fort as in and of itself, city offices this way. Millersville's a neighborhood, it's always going to be that way. Cathedral would probably be I think Millersville has talked to that school a little bit, and they probably would like a sign and probably will contribute things that are a little more permanent, which is why I would hesitate to like the advertising piece. If we get into that from businesses, may need to be something that's a little less permanent, a little different, because I would tend to think it might change. Yeah.
Good start.
Yeah, good. And I'm glad they brought drawings to this meeting so that I could show you. And I wouldn't say those are final by any stretch, but I think the response on Mayor Collier's part and mine, and it sounded like all of yours was pretty positive. So it seems like something to work toward at least. So moving on, if that's all right, in the vein of monuments, going back some time, I met with a group called really a foundation started by a businessman in North Carolina called the Charters of Freedom Monuments Association. And interesting story, this guy, Vance Patterson, owns an industrial fan company that manufactures fans in North Carolina. He and his wife traveled to Washington, D.C., and they went and they saw the Charters of Freedom there on display in Washington, D.C., and it made an impression on him, and he thought, there are a lot of people that will never make it here to see these documents that are the foundation of the country, and I think that's a shame. Maybe there's a way that I can take them to people. So starting in North Carolina and then expanding from there, and I forget how many settings they've done, but the model is to place these small monuments that essentially are kind of replicate the Charters of Freedom display in Washington, D.C. with stamped bronze versions, sort of plexiglass encased stamped bronze versions of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And there are some options on kind of pedestals that are built into the ground on footers that are designed to be permanent. The thought being it's a potential field trip location for schools. It's something that they'd like to be visible and accessible so that people can, see and read and interact with the charter's documents. So they approached the city a while ago, and it's a private foundation. They tend to raise their own money and have done so here, and have really wanted to pursue a setting here in Lawrence that is not going to be costing. I don't think the city has pledged to pay anything for this. So we are working with them to finalize a location, probably here on the fort, and maybe get that underway with an idea with a look toward dedicating that monument even around July 4th of this year. So could be cool. Did you find
I just pulled up a picture.
And I think I have some materials in my office, but that I forgot to bring. But I think the thought here is that the podiums that hold the monuments would be brick with a limestone cap, so they would fit in well. And then the plates that represent the documents are stamped bronze, I believe, and are designed to be permanent and encased and available for generations to see. Which, again, we certainly thought was a cool thing, and thought the fort as a central location in Lawrence made sense. So we're, again, just sort of another little sort of side project, but we will be coordinating a location and working with them to get that underway.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, that's nice.
And so just wanted to make you all aware. Did
they say again where they think a good spot for this would be?
Well, we haven't finalized the location yet. We had initially thought that near the Starrett Center might make sense. There's some space there just east of it near Post Road that's nice and visible, that's kind of already on land that the city of Lawrence owns and controls. I've thought about Memorial Park over toward Lee Road as well, or even a corner of Civic Plaza. That's not city land, neither of those currently, so that has its own complications. But if we can coordinated in conjunction with the cultural campus over there near Post and Otis. That seemed to make a lot of sense, as long as we can keep it in keep the flow good and not interfere. I think Arts for Lawrence was involved in early meetings with this group, and we're certainly supportive of it being over there. And so we tend to think probably that somewhere in there, 56th and Otis, or Post and Otis.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd love it if it flowed with that new park and everything. That would be really kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. And it would, again, they like them to be in places where school groups can access them. So being able to drop off from a bus standpoint kind of behind there and have, so this makes sense. So we'll see where that ends up, but it could be happening here pretty soon, and should be a positive thing. On the topic of dedications, I would mention I just recently, I think just yesterday, got an email. Meyer Plastics is looking to do a ribbon cutting ceremony May 2nd at 10:30 a.m. So we will follow up once that is completely firmed up, but the mayor's asked me to make sure that I coordinate that with the Lawrence Chamber of Commerce and with our PIO, Jimmy Griffin, and local media, et cetera, but it's looking like May 2nd is the likely date for that. Again, once that's for sure, and I think it's pretty close to for sure, I'll make sure that we get that to you in writing and email so that you're aware of the date and can attend if you would like to do so. Obviously, the building's gone up very quickly, and that's all positive, but it'll be great to see that actually be able to cut a ribbon and see them get to work from an operations standpoint here. So again, I'll confirm that. Other little housekeeping items, of course, the Mira Awards that we talked about last month. The ceremony, the actual awards gala, is April 13th. I'll be attending. Trace Yates from the Chamber will be attending. Aletha and Heather from the FHRA will be attending. And I think potentially Mayor Collier and his wife will be attending. And it's just fingers crossed at this point. We won't know until then whether Lawrence is the recipient of the award or not. But again, I think the interview went well, and we can hope. And it'll be good to be there. We'll have half of a table there for the Lawrence crowd, and just be good to be there and be visible. So I look forward to that. And then it came to our attention today that we need to update the Redevelopment Commission photo that appears on there. I think it's on the financial update. So we've asked Jimmy to, there it is. Commissioner Brown is missing. So we'd like to update that so that it accurately depicts the current commission. And especially with Dick being absent, we've asked Jimmy to be ready to take a photo next month. So just FYI, we'll probably re-up that picture at the next month's meeting. Let's see. All right, I'll move on to the last item here, absent questions about those prior items. No. So the Trades District project, 7600 Pendleton Pike, as we discussed at the last meeting, and then I think the commission had some feedback related to a couple of different amendments, specifically with regard to design review process and what that would look like, and incorporation of median wage figure as part of the recitals for the kind of the baseline for doing the project. I've made those changes, circulated that to you all a week ago or so. I've also sent that on to Frigi RSC for consideration. I know they've been chewing on the agreement anyway, don't have feedback from them yet. But any questions or discussion on that document at this meeting?
Waiting, I'm anxious to see what they say, whether they're...
Me too, and I think I mentioned in my email to you when after our last meeting I did update them and say we chewed on this as a commission, and my main points of feedback were about incorporating that meeting, but that's part of their IEDC sort of state tax credit incentive application anyway, so maybe we incorporate that and kind of beef up their design review process, and they at least informally said those things should be fine. We'll see about the rest of it. I think the main thing that they're really taking their time to review is the timeline that we put on, starting the effective date, closing in 60 days, just making sure that that can come to fruition. So I'll be sure to update you once I get feedback. In the meantime, we did put, under new business, that resolution that we were considering to essentially say, as it stands, so long as as far as the commission's concerned, it's good, we'll approve it. Give the president the authority to sign once appropriate, with of course the understanding that as changes come in, we'll check in with you and say, here's what they've come back with, and informally be able to say, here's how that changes the agreement as it was. So again, if any questions or concerns or discussion, happy to take that. If not, might be just make things efficient and keep things moving if the commission would consider that, passing that resolution and just getting the authority piece out of the way.
Discussion,
I think
questions?
it's moving in a good direction.
Good.
I think we ought to wait for them to come back, because I think they're gonna wanna chip away at it, but
Well,
I could go either way. Rather than us,
And
and if you can, I mean, one of the things they need to know is that we're kinda waiting on them to say, hey, this is good, then we'll sign off on it.
I exchanged emails with them today, so I would hope to have feedback soon. And certainly, if we want to keep the resolution tabled until we know where they come back, we can. I would say only as a maybe, if we were to be ready to go and want to see, I'm sure part of their due diligence at this point is looking at construction schedule and availability to move dirt. My one hesitation in that is I wouldn't want them to be waiting, the better part of a month for us to get together and authorize the resolution and then execute, because that could really throw off construction schedules. If you're willing to consider, if that were to happen, and that's really just a maybe, I'm just trying to keep other considerations in my head here. If the commission would consider, if we needed to throw together a special meeting and notice it, that just knowing that would be a possibility, if we were to table the resolution and wait for feedback to come in, apart from that, certainly fine. I don't mean to rush the commission in any stretch. I just want to keep things as efficient as we can. And if we're happy with the agreement, we could say we're good unless it gets off the rails here when they come back with their changes. Other than that, I'm happy to wait and check in with you and vote on it again down the road once we know what they have to say about it, with the understanding on your all's part that we want to be able to move fairly quickly once we get to a point where both parties are happy, just so we can get it moving.
Well, if I'm not wrong, and I could be, I would think they would want to, in the form it's in right now, Cam, I'm fine with it. But, and to say that to them, we're ready to go, we're fine with the agreement as it stands, if you're not gonna change anything, let's go.
Yeah.
Away we go, but, and if they're, having reviewed it, and informally, they've agreed to it, in consideration of what their timeline is, it shouldn't be a dance. So.
Right. And I don't necessarily anticipate one. The informal check-in was just about, I had sent them the initial, when I sent it to you all in the first place, I sent it to them as well and said, we're going to talk about this this is a draft. I haven't talked to the commission about this yet. But when I then got back to them and said, update, the commission wanted to see a couple of tweaks, so I'm going to make those. And the feedback was, we should be fine with those tweaks. I didn't have feedback as to the initial agreement, but again, it does mirror the LOI that we already had in place. So I don't anticipate wholesale changes by any stretch or any kind of a dance. We know that they do have a current lease that runs through 19. So in terms of the push-pull, I think we are in a position to want to see something happen sooner than that. And they're trying to hedge and say, yeah, we like the location, we like the idea of moving, finish the year well, we want to do it. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we know we've got a lease through the end of the year. Let's make sure all of those, everything is sequenced well. I think that's the only dance.
What you just said is exactly where I am. We're waiting on them.
Yes, right.
Procedurally, if we have a special meeting, what advance notice do we have to publish or post?
I think it's the standard 48-hour notice. We just need to get the agenda out and posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting. It's not a 10-day public hearing kind of thing. It's a
All of us
standard
being
meeting.
so close, and I
Yes.
mean, I think at special meetings, it's the simple answer.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering.
And again, that's a maybe. So I mean, it may be fine if I say I get feedback in a week. I say, well, our next meeting's not till the next month, and we'll see where we get between now and then, and we should be good to go after that.
But if a special
may be
meeting
fine.
becomes necessary, I would think we could get a quorum in 48 hours.
If it does, you get a quorum. The only risk to that being, of course, as long as we had a quorum, we'd probably host the meeting, and even if one or two of you couldn't make it, just so long as we have that understanding, I'm fine tabling it. Again, I'm not pushing so much as just giving the option of front-ending it.
Is it possible to
Knowing that
approve?
That's why we're having this special meeting. If they would want to attend,
Yeah.
all the better.
Okay.
God bless them.
Yeah.
Is it possible to approve as is? And then if they have changes, we have a special meeting?
Yes, but I think my recommendation would be just to wait.
Just wait, okay.
Because as is, even if we changed one little thing, we'd kind of have to have it anyway. And there may be a word here or there, even at the easiest. So,
I hope they're not getting cold feet.
it'll still do probably some good to say, hey, I made those changes. I've checked in with the commission now. We're fine with it as is. So that's that will should be encouraging. Like we've got the commission on board with the document as it stands. So absent major changes, I think the approvals will be easy. That should keep them on the.
Have they locked in on a design?
No,
No.
nope. And
So we're still working with the conceptual drawings that they had.
yes, yeah. I think they've been reevaluating. I think I mentioned last month or the month before they were looking to see how 2018 finished. I think it finished strongly, so they're looking at really kind of maximizing their presence on the site. So I would anticipate that that's good news. They're not trying to shrink the. We want them to make good use of the site. So we're still kind of in that conceptual framework before actual schematic design would start.
So if let me see if I understand what you just said.
Okay.
So they're going to establish a budget and then kind of back in, here's what we're going to do budget-wise, and then we're going to back into the design? Is that what you said?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more about how much space do we need, and it would be, and what's our capacity to really go all out for this new headquarters. And so I think the way the year finished meant that they were motivated to say, well, things are going well. We've got some good trends. We expect to continue growing. So they're coming into the new headquarters with that expectation, as opposed to, well, we contracted a little bit in 18. Maybe we don't want to go too overboard. It's really kind of just an insider detail as to their considerations. Of course, I think it's important to recognize that this is a major business decision on the company's part as well. I think they're committed to moving. They like the site. Again, they're happy with the LOI. I think we've got things where we want them. It's just the details of, is it 60,000 square feet or are we thinking, now maybe we'll just kind of cut off this corner of the building and it'll be more like 40, 45. So I think we're on the former there, just based on their internal calculations about how big they need to be and whether they think they're going to continue to grow at the rate that they have over the last few years.
Interesting. Thought they'd be further along at this point.
Any other discussion or questions for Mr. Starnes? All right. Is there any other business?
It might be appropriate if you want to table the resolution, it might be good to have somebody just move to table it and take that kind of as a formal measure.
Okay. Do I have a motion to table this resolution?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second? All in favor? All right, we will table it. Is there any other business to come before the commission?
I do have one question. What's the status of the commission's legal counsel?
I actually wrote that down and then forgot to bring it up. So, and I was to meet with Mayor Collier today about that to discuss. The city has retained new counsel after David has moved downtown on a part-time retainer basis. Unfortunately, the mayor's father-in-law passed away over the weekend, so he is out of town for the funeral today. And we've rescheduled that meeting for next week, so I hope to have an update for you at the next month's meeting about how that will work moving forward.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to thank all the attendees at the meeting. Just want to make it, I've been on this board for, 3 or 4 years, and I was on Board of Zoning Appeals. I've never had a completely empty.
Chris Barnett had an unexpected meeting this
Okay.
afternoon downtown.
Our one fan.
Yeah, a faithful fan. He's unexpectedly absent, yes.
And the chamber typically has a representative, but
Usually have two, I guess.
Spring break. We're
Spring
gonna
break.
work on
that is.
Well, there's,
What are you going to do?
there are probably people at Chris's father's this afternoon also.
Yeah, it's possible. I think they're, yeah, so.
I think
If
we can,
anybody's watching us on Facebook, thank you. We're not alone.
I think we can move to adjourn, though.
The next meeting is scheduled for April 23rd. And do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Also move.
Any
Second.
seconds? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.